Hi everyone. So I finally have been able to get this communications class uploaded and to you guys. I'm really sorry about the initial time when I tried to do it. I think it was like last Friday, and yeah, it just was acting crazy. I just could not get my tech to work the way that I wanted it to. Actually, no, it was before last Friday. It was like Monday. I think it was like last Monday. It's been a while. Anyway, finally I'm getting this to you. I want you to have all the tools you need in order to combat some communication issues at home during this time of deep stress. I mean, we keep getting new news every day. Quarantine continues to get extended. It's just a really chaotic time, and we are all going through it, and we are all feeling it in so many different ways. So hopefully this information can be helpful and useful for you as you navigate what's to come, and you stay firm within your family, within the people that you're living with, roommates, relationships, whatever. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hello, that's my face. Okay, awesome. So let's get to it. Perfect. I'm going to move me down here. Great. All right, so we are better together. And, you know, this is just really a display of helping you understand just the most effective ways to have communication and honest conversations with the people that you love during a time that feels really scary. So let's just jump right into it. Right now, we are under a massive amount of stress, and not to mention the global stress that we're experiencing, all the anxiety, all the energy of anxious energy that's all around us at all times. We are also dealing with our own normal stress life stuff. So normal complications in our relationship communication, worries about finances, worries about our career. I mean, we're worried now about having basic necessities, toilet paper, like things that are just very unprecedented, things we took for granted are now on top of all of our normal stressors. So we're feeling it. We're feeling the heavy burden. And so my hope is that with this information, you can lighten your load a little bit. So in Psychology Today, they identified 4 major relationship communication mistakes that ruins love. And I thought this was a great place to identify so we can get started with what's not working, what you might already be doing, and hopefully this will give you some foundation for what needs to change. Now the next slide I messed up on, so we're going to skip that and go to the next one. So here we are. 4 things that ruin relationships. Number 1, the you directives. When you are using the word you, it really heightens the sensitivity of the person you are talking to. And it feels very blaming, and it feels very defensive, or the other person might become very defensive because a you directive feels very personal, right? So you don't listen, you are mean, when you say you, right? So it takes, basically, when you use the term you, instead of it identifying a behavior, now you are attacking someone's character. So that's why it can be very, damaging in relationships. The next thing is 2, universal statements. So this means using statements like always, never, so you never take out the trash. You always complain about my cooking, right? Now, these things may seem simple initially, but they add up for sure. And so when you're using something like never or always, it doesn't leave room for that person to show you that they are actually doing the behavior that you hope that they would be doing, that they have taken out the trash, that they haven't complained about your cooking, they've actually enjoyed it. So using that term can be very limiting and limit your ability to see your partner or your family member doing something good. 3, tough on the person, soft on the issue. So this means that instead of taking the greater issue into account, you're really hard on that person, and probably using these directives, you directives or universal statements. Like, for example, Eric, he works a lot of hours, and so when he was coming home and wouldn't give me a heads up when he was on his way, and maybe I'd already started dinner, and I was trying to time it just right, but he got held up at work, I would be really tough on him and be like, you know, like, I just can't believe you didn't contact me. Like, I don't understand why you can't just call me on your way home. It's not that hard. In reality, it was never really about him calling. It was about me trying to time. I was trying to be a good, you know, good woman and time our meals so that he had a hot meal when he came home. And instead, I felt like I was letting him down because it wasn't prepared at the right time, right? So the issue itself was this expectation of, does he need a hot meal when he comes home? Do we have to eat together? Versus me blaming him for not doing what I internally expected him to do, right? Hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave your comments below. I will get back to them as they show up whenever you happen to watch this video. 4, invalidate feelings. So this can be when you dismiss someone's feelings or maybe minimize someone's feelings. I know we've all experienced this, and when that happens, it really does take a toll in your relationship, because it makes it feel as though the person you're communicating with, the person that you love, doesn't really care, right? That's how we internalize when our feelings are dismissed. So, you know, someone saying, oh, it's not really that bad, or you're just a worrywart, you know, things like that can really invalidate our feelings. And right now we have a lot of feelings and we have a lot of stress. So it's important that we honor and hold space for each other's emotional state respectively, even if it doesn't mirror our own. So the 4 sections we're going to cover in this conversation are number 1, communication styles, the different types. 2, how to initiate conversation in a healthy way. 3, the speaker-listener technique, which is one of my favorites to use for families and couples. And then 4, the best practices to keep the peace during this time. So a little bit about me, if you don't know me, if this is the first time you're seeing something that I'm doing, I am a marriage and family therapist turned relationship coach. I just love couples coaching and family coaching, and I love working with individuals who are trying to get their relationship life on track. And so what I really saw is that there's this need, especially right now during this time of great stress, for some communication skills, some understanding, some learning, some lessons about communication and how to have effective communication with the people that we love. Unfortunately, because of this time, divorce rates are probably going to go sky high. People are just like misunderstanding each other because they're not taking the time to listen. And I hope that if you are here, if you're watching this, that communication is important to you, and that these are some valuable lessons that you could learn. So having a really good understanding about how to communicate effectively can at least reduce the symptoms of, you know, of defensiveness and conflict and all of these things. I mean, you really can't use these tools to deflect and diffuse a lot of highly sensitive feels right now. So phase 1, communication style, and what is your style? So there are 4 different types of communications styles: aggressive, passive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. Assertive is the one we will talk about later. It is the best form of communication, and I will tell you why in a sec. But until we get there, let's talk about aggressive. Aggressive is a communication style that does not leave room for other people's opinions. It is kind of like a bulldozer. It is very pressured. It can typically show up in the forms of anger or hostility, and it really doesn't take the other person's feelings into account. So aggressiveness can typically be associated, unfortunately, with men, but women are aggressive too, obviously. Like, it's not just men are aggressive, but we kind of pass that or pawn that off on men for whatever reason in our society. 2, passive. Passive is this, I like to call it like the slow simmer. Passive is, it's not that they don't respond. People who have passive communication styles, it's not that they don't respond or feel hurt by the things that are coming at them. They just stuff. And they stuff and they stuff and they stuff. And because it is not safe for them to share their feelings with other people, they end up exploding in other ways. So whether that's through addiction or or eating disorders or self-harming behaviors. There's just this, and it doesn't have to be those, but it's typically some level of explosion that's more self-sabotaging versus it being something that's geared towards others. Because people who are passive typically are passive. They want to avoid conflict at all costs. Now there's passive aggressive, and I would say a lot of women get kind of thrown into this category of passive aggressive behavior. Again, men are just as passive aggressive as women, but for some reason we like to, put these things in categories because our brains need categories or whatever. But passive aggressive is the slow simmer, but let me show you. It's kind of the way that it works. So those who are passive aggressive, they will internalize a situation, and because they don't feel safe expressing themselves in a healthy way, they will display their contempt or their anger in something physical, whether it's slamming a door or rolling their eyes or leaving you a Post-it note or writing you a horrible text. Like anything to avoid in-person conflict is like super important. But then it's like also, like they still need to let you know that they're hurt. And so that's passive aggressive. And I'm sure we all have had experiences at times, depending on who we're communicating with, all three of these. Now let's talk about assertive, the healthy communication style. All the stars, we're so happy. So assertive communication is really great because it leaves room for a difference of opinions, and without you feeling as though you are being diminished or that you are like, I don't know, like that your voice doesn't matter. You don't have to kind of cower behind someone else having an opinion that's different from yours. When you're assertive, you're confident in what you're saying, you're clear, you're firm, but you're calm. And when it comes to actually setting healthy boundaries, no is a sentence. It's no, period. And that's what's so great about being assertive. You can take other people's needs into account while also honoring and respecting your own space. And that's why it's such a healthy way of communicating. So here's some thought questions. What is your current communication style? Do you find that you're aggressive? Maybe you're passive, maybe you're passive aggressive, maybe you're a combination of all three, depending on who you're talking about or talking to. Sometimes it's important to look at like your career versus your family versus your partnership. Like how do you communicate and what looks different? And is there any area in your life that you already communicate in a healthy way? So some of us communicate very well in our careers, but we don't communicate very well in our families or in our romantic relationships. So how do you correlate or translate how you communicate in a healthy way to one of the areas that you don't communicate as healthily? And so what would you need? What are you missing in order to make that area of your life more assertive? Are you missing that boundary piece where no is okay? It's like you're a people pleaser and you need to just be okay with saying no. Are you not very clear, right? You don't really believe in what you're saying, so maybe you're not very clear or confident. So just think about those things as you continue along this journey of communication. So phase 2, initiating the conversation. So right now, there are a lot of conversations that need to be had that are not being had. So conversations around expectations, around fears, around emotional ability. There's so many layers that we're experiencing at this moment where we just are unsure, and probably some of us don't feel very safe to speak our mind. And if you're in a loving and healthy relationship, you should be allowed or you should be able to speak your mind in a healthy way. So one of my favorite things that I learned over the course of my career is to prepare the recipient. This can be a game changer. And all this is doing is just asking the person you want to communicate with, hey, is this a really good time? I would like to talk to you about X. Or I've been feeling a certain way and I need to know whether or not it's okay for us to talk about this. And when you prepare the recipient, it at least gives that person the opportunity to digest that you're about to say something that could be a conflict, could cause conflict, but that they are prepared to receive the message so that they can maybe formulate their sentences in a better way. One thing the next phase of this that's really important is being accepting, assertive, and authentic. So you have to accept that if it's not a good time for you to communicate with whatever you have on your heart to your person, that's okay, as long as you guys come up with a day and a time that that you both can sit down and talk about what you need to say. Verbal expression is very important to a lot of people, and being able to be on the same page before you even express yourself can already yield better results. And being assertive, knowing that what you have to say matters, knowing that your emotions matter, your feelings matter, and that it's okay for you to articulate them, and just being authentic in the moment. So you don't need to talk like in Downton Abbey conversations and hither thee and hither they, you know, like you don't have to be all weird and inauthentic. Just be yourself when you're communicating to the people that you love what you're feeling. And I just want to caveat all of this, that this is all for relationships that are built in love. Maybe they lack a little trust, maybe they lack a little communication, and they're like some things that are missing, but these are not for abusive relationships. If you're in a toxic relationship with somebody, they probably won't really hear you very well, but you could try to practice it. Just throwing that out there. So thought questions. Think about an uncomfortable topic that you need to have with someone. I posed this question in the group, and something that came up is that right now it's hard to express how scared you really are about everything that's going on, and you're trying to put on a brave face and stay strong, and it's exhausting, right? And so having that conversation with the people that you love to see how they can support you is really important, and also how you can support them. So think about an uncomfortable topic, something that you typically wouldn't just share on a whim, and think about ways that you can prepare the recipient to have this conversation. So, hey, something's been on my heart. Is there any way that we could talk about it? I just need to unload a little bit. I'm feeling really stressed and I just need a listening ear. Things like that. And just asking your loved one to see if they can set aside some time to talk with you. Phase 3, the speaker-listener technique. This one, again, is like one of my favorite techniques, but it's also, as simple as it is, it can be very difficult. So I want you to hopefully have a pen and paper or something where you can take notes, pause the video as you're watching it, grab a pen and paper, because I want you to write down this sequence so you can practice it. So the speaker. Here is the breakdown of how you're going to start off a conversation. Now, the speaker-listener technique is a great thing if you're having conflict with your partner, in order to help you take the blaming you out of the situation, and make it more on the behavior that you want to change. We can't really change our personalities. We can't really change like who we are as a being, but we can hopefully change, if we're willing, our behaviors. And so when you use the speaker-listener technique, it identifies the behavior that you need to change, or that you're having a feeling about, and it helps the listener have a more concrete understanding as to why this thing is making you feel a certain way. So here is the rubric. I feel blank when you blank because blank. So for example, I feel hurt when you roll your eyes because it makes me think that you don't care about the things that are important to me. All right, we'll repeat that. I feel hurt when you roll your eyes because it makes me think that you don't care about the things that are important to me. So as you can see in here, there's a feeling, and you're using a feeling word. A lot of people here want to use, I feel, how do they say? I feel that you is what people want to say there. That's something that I guess is the normal part of our daily language. And that, again, is kind of putting all the blame. It's using a you directive. I feel that you, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a feeling word. I feel hurt. I feel disappointed. I feel angered. I feel uncomfortable. You get it. When you insert the behavior here. So when you roll your eyes, it's a behavior. Rolling your eyes is something that you can stop with a lot of practice. It's probably just an ingrained habit from your youth. It is something that you can change. I feel that you are a piece of shit is not something that you can change. And it's very blaming, and it would make this listener get really defensive, right? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So now let's get to the listener aspect. So the listener would then say, repeat verbatim, I heard you say that you feel hurt when I roll my eyes because it makes you think that what you say is not important to me. Did I hear you correctly? I think I repeated that right. Important to you. There we go. So if you need to replace the I and you, that's okay. But verbatim is important. Using the same words. Different pronouns is all right, but using the same words overall is super important. And then you would say, as a listener, did I hear you correctly? If the speaker said yes, then you would acknowledge the feelings that happened and that came up and provide a solution. So for example, I am so sorry that I hurt you. This again is another place where people want to say, I'm so sorry that you feel that way. When you say, I'm so sorry that you feel that way, what does that do? Yes, it's dismissive of feelings, right? And we want to avoid that because that's one of the core four that ruin relationships. So I am sorry that I hurt you. Acknowledging that whatever you did, your response triggered their feeling of hurt. And so that is validating their feelings. And so now you then provide a solution. In the future, instead of rolling my eyes, I will let you know when I feel triggered by something that you say. All right? So there's a solution. You acknowledge feelings. You provided a solution. There you go. Conflict avoided. If the speaker says, no, you didn't hear me, then you'll just go back through the thing all over again. You'll start from the beginning. All right, speaker, I feel hurt when you roll your eyes because it makes me think that you don't care about the things that are important to me. Listener repeats, X, Y, and Z. I'm assuming we got this. Okay, so I know it seems really basic, especially when I break it down, but when you try to do this with your partner, it can be very difficult because it's not what we typically do when we're communicating. It is so simplified, it's like oversimplified that it feels more complicated than it really is. So just make sure that you wrote down this rubric and practice. Practice with something that's very simple at first. So I used to just make up stuff like, I feel hurt that you didn't trim the trees because now they're dead. You know, like, and then you would practice with your partner or the person you're talking to see if they could get that formula correct. And then you go into something a little bit harder. Again, if you have any questions, leave your comments below and I will reply to them when I see this. So, have you ever used this communication style before, this communication technique before? A lot of times if you've done couples therapy or family therapy, you might be exposed to this. This is something that I used to use in my, well, I still use it now in my couples coaching sessions, but I used to really use it a lot for my family therapy and my couples therapy. And how successful has it been for you? A lot of times people find success with it in session, but maybe they don't find as much success with it outside of session. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're probably not really practicing, or maybe you're implementing the formula in the wrong way, or sometimes we just need a little bit more accountability and guidance to really get it locked in so that we can communicate in this way and communicate more effectively. The goal is to talk about the feeling, to get to the feeling, and that is the issue, not necessarily what's happening, but like why you feel a certain way. What's the explanation behind the feeling? So if you haven't ever used it before, then do you commit to trying it out? Using this formula, teaching your partner or your family member how to do it, and then practicing it with them. I guarantee you, you'll have a lot more success tackling some of the tougher topics if you use this formula. All right, so phase 4, best practices for keeping the peace. So this is going to be a little bit of a doozy, so let's get to it. Okay, so 1, recognize your anger cues in your partner, family member, or your roommate, whatever, their anger cues as well. And this is so paramount because if you are spiked in anger, you are probably not going to say things as clearly and concisely, as assertively as you would want to. So making sure that your own anger is, down to baseline or not very heightened. And then if you lived with somebody for a while, or if you know someone well enough, you have an idea when they're agitated. Most of us can tell if the other person's agitated just via text message, right? Like just the way that someone types a text message. So chances are, if you're in front of that person, you have an idea of whether or not they are heightened in sensitivity. So just avoiding conversations during that period of time and making sure you guys are both in a lower state when you even initiate the conversation or prepare the recipient for a harder topic. 2, processing style. Know your processing style as well as your loved ones. So processing style is really important. So I am an external processor. In fact, I was on the phone with my mom today and I was just like, wow, like, man, that just talking to you made things so much more clear, because I forget how important it is that I process out loud to other people. And unfortunately, since I work from home, the only people I get to talk to are my dog. So it works, but it doesn't work as effectively as talking to someone else. So understanding that by verbally processing things out loud, if you're an external processor, it helps you collect your thoughts in a more linear fashion rather than them being all scrambled internally. Now, if you are an internal processor, it's completely the opposite. If you try to say something before you've processed it, it will come out a hot mess. So you need to figure it out in your mind and how it makes sense and how it kind of streamlines, and then you can speak. So internal processors typically take a little bit more time before they actually share their thoughts and their feelings. And understanding your difference in styles is super important, because if you're an external processor, you kind of have this assumption that everybody processes like you, which is not true. And whenever we do that and we make those assumptions, then unfortunately it can cause conflict just by rushing our internal processing loved ones to hurry up and tell us, what they're thinking, and that's not okay. And I know this firsthand because I'm an external processor and Eric is an internal one. Point blank. I have to give him space to digest information so then he can share his thoughts clearly. 3, give each other some space. Right now, a lot of us are stuck with people for so much more longer. Yes, that's a great word. Come on, Brittany. So much more than we've ever been in the history of our relationship ever, right? And it is difficult, especially to live in a small space. If you have some space, then great, I'm sure. But if you live in a small amount of space or a small area, like, it's so important to even just create space. And that could just even be like just going to the bedroom and having someone stay in the living room, or, just separating areas of the house, pockets of the house. Having one person go for a walk while the other person stays home. Whatever you need to do in order to create that space, do that, because it's going to be life-giving. A lot of us are used to being separate for work. Not everybody is like that, but a lot of us are. And even if we go to work at the same place, we might have different responsibilities and duties. So just like acknowledging that we need that space, and creating that for yourselves as much as you possibly can during this time. 4, take a breath. There's something so magical about breathing. Who knew? It literally is the gift of life, right? And if you take a breath, what happens is that it initiates this process in your central nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system, which de-escalates or deactivates the fight, flight, or freeze response. So if you're in a heightened state of stress and you're seeing your anger cues, you're getting triggered by your partner, all the things, take like 5 deep breaths and hold it at the top if you can. While you inhale, hold it for 5 seconds and then release for 5 seconds, and it will make a world of difference. It will change your rapid thinking to something a little bit more mild and more mute, and then you can hopefully engage in the appropriate behaviors to handle whatever's being triggered in your environment. Power of the breath is great. And then don't forget the power of the pause. I had to learn this one, especially being an external processor, that I need to pause before I speak. If I just speak immediately, everything is still going to come out a little jumbled. It's going to not be clear, and I might hurt somebody's feelings. So pausing before I speak is super important to collect my thoughts, to calm down my system, and then to express myself clearly and assertively. 6, the mirroring technique. So this can be really helpful if you are in a heightened state with your partner. So, or it's emotional, I would say. So mirroring doesn't mean you want to escalate in anger. You never want to do that. But if your partner is just trying to get you to hear them, and they're leaning into you, and they're bearing their soul and their heart, leaning into them too is a great mirroring technique. Now, if they are like, you're too close to them and it feels like you're pulling at them energetically and they back away, then backing away can be really relieving for them to give them that space that they need. So that's mirroring. It's like coming together, moving apart based off of what how your partner's responding to, to the experience that's going on. And then, so this kind of goes into 7. So like I said, I don't want you to escalate in anger, but I want you to stay regulated even if the other person escalates in anger. Because typically, if we're doing this with somebody that we love, if we stay pretty calm and level-headed, if they try to explode, they'll feel kind of off, and so they will just naturally come back down to be at our level. So as long as we remain calm, even if we're like upset, we just remain calm and just, we don't add a lot of external energy to fuel to the fire, then hopefully it'll de-escalate that person's sensitivity. And then 8 is boundaries and expectations. It's so important to know what your boundaries are, having those conversations about what's off the table, like we are not talking about this right now, or if we're going to talk about it, we need to set up a whole new conversation for this. What your expectations are for this time, like can we both agree that we both need space around this time, and that we also both need to come together at this time, that it's not always about space, that sometimes we need to actually create time for intimacy, especially during stressful moments. So just coming up with those boundaries. And I'm sorry that I spelled boundaries wrong. Please forgive me. Apparently I was like in a rush when I did these slides a week ago or so. All right, whew, like I said, that was a mouthful, but really, really great tools that you can use to help you keep the peace in your home. So what are some physical signs that let you know it's time to de-escalate? For me, I know that I'm getting agitated if I cock my head to the side and I'm like, like a little eyebrow raise, a little furrow of the brow. My brain gets like it's on fire, spinning its wheels. Typically I feel like heatness or like a lump in my throat, like I need to express myself. Those are some times that I know I need to like take a pause, take a breath, leave the room, take a time out, like whatever. And what's the most effective thing that helps you regulate? Like I said, breathing helps me regulate. Eric hears me breathe a lot. I'll just be like, and sometimes it's not even geared towards him. It's just like, oh, I'm stressed. Okay, let me just breathe that out. Taking a pause, walking away, timeouts can be very helpful for me. So just thinking about what that is. And then practice, instead of getting upset, being curious, asking follow-up questions in a non-judgmental way if possible. So so this is what I would typically do. If Eric says something and I'm like, okay, so I heard you say this. Is this what you meant? Because this is how I'm experiencing it. Because not all the time do our intentions, are they actually internalized, right? So just because you say something with good intent doesn't mean that it was received in a healthy way. So just making sure that you're on the same page of what you truly meant to say and saying what you mean and having the listener hear what you mean is so important and will help you avoid a lot of conflict. So a few little things you can try at home during this time that I find to be very valuable. So one is a gratitude jar, or like, just saying gratitude around the table. Right now, we really need to remind ourselves of what we're grateful for. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that we have a home with space, and that I have a business online, and and that I have friends and family who are healthy and I'm healthy, and like all of these different things, right? So those things are so important. Getting you and your family and your kids involved in all of this is super great. And I think I forgot to mention that all of these techniques you can use with your children, as long as they're age appropriate. Children need a safe space to be able to express themselves too. So providing that for them as your parent without any expectation of how they're experiencing their fear, or trying to change their fear, or even making them more fearful, like don't do anything like that. Just let them express themselves. And if for some reason they are unable to do it verbally, let them draw it out. Kids will tell you a lot based off of a picture. I don't want you to psychoanalyze it because you're not trained to psychoanalyze it, but just allow them some place to expressively get their thoughts out, get their feelings out, and it'll be so helpful for your kiddos. If they're a little bit older, tell them to write it in a journal, and if they want to share it with you, then they can, but if not, they don't have to. Those can be really great outlets during this time of fear, because unfortunately kids pick up on it no matter how strong you feel. Like they see the news, they see the media, their friends are probably talking about it. Like, I mean, it's a scary time for them too. So giving them that space is super important. All right, so speaker listener technique, you can try that. Try throwing all of your fears and concerns in a bowl or hat and answer them one by one. That way it takes the pressure off of who said what. And your kids, especially if you're doing this with your children and your family, they'll have a space to hear that other people have fears that may be the same as theirs, and they don't necessarily have to ask them, they can get that cleared up. Write a family mission statement, really get back to the core sense of values and morals that you guys have as a family and what you guys plan to do as a family unit and what that looks like, and writing that out and reading, maybe reading it out loud once a week or posting it somewhere in your house is really valuable. A game I used to play with some of my families is like I would have them write 5 things that they really valued and really loved about each member of their family, and then I would also have them write 5 things that they wish their family member would improve for their relationship. And so, sometimes be like, be more present, play more games, that's what a lot of the kids would say. So things like that, and that way it gives everybody the opportunity to feel loved and also hear what they could improve upon. And typically, if you're getting the same post-it note that says the same thing, like be more present, chances are that's something that you really need to work on. So it can be a really great opportunity for growth, especially since right now we have a lot of time. Institute silent time or independent study. So kind of like what I was talking about before, creating space. Sometimes we just need to, say you don't have a lot of space in your house, just being like, okay, so for the next hour, it's going to be silent study, independent study. Everybody's going to go and do their own thing for an hour, and then we'll come together and we can talk about it or not. But everybody's silent for an hour, and just trying to do that and creating that space and that time so that you can collect your bearings. Some of you might need to initiate your silent time by just going to read a book in the bedroom, like whatever you need to do, y'all. It is okay right now. We are all figuring this out together. And then another thing you could do is write out expectations that you have for the family and for this time. And just create like a whole list, like I expect us to do this, this, and this, and this, whatever. And allow your partner to also write those out as well. You guys read them together, see what is congruent, see maybe where you guys might have missed the mark, and come up with a compromise. Because a lot of times we just have a bunch of assumptions and we really aren't explicitly stating what we need or what we expect. And if you can explicitly get it out, then you will hopefully have a better time being in a healthy, compatible relationship, especially during heightened times of stress. So hopefully that was helpful. Oh, did I? Okay, I haven't stopped it yet, have I? No, I have not. Okay. Last thing, I guess it didn't work. Okay, so last thing is, if for some reason you need to seek professional training, please do. Like, there are a lot of therapists going online right now. There are a lot of coaches who are available to you. Obviously, I'm one as well if you need me, but it's so important that if you need someone to help you iron out the kinks, really help you with that speaker-listener technique, help you get the momentum that you need to have these conversations and create expectations and boundaries and all of those things, because doing it on your own is not safe yet, then please do so. And you can find me at info@letsgio.com. Okay, just email me, we'll talk, we'll see if we're a good fit, and we'll try to see if we can work something out to help you and your family have a successful quarantined life right now and whatever's to come beyond this, okay? Thank you so much for joining me on this call, on this journey, on this whatever this thing is, presentation, I guess. And excuse me, and I hope that yeah, if you have any questions, you will seek someone out and get the help that you need. Remember, leave your comments below. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want to just share me, give me a little love, do that. I would just appreciate it so much. And let me know how I can be of service for you. All right, bye.